This is Gemara Zevachim, Daf Pei. Hey, and we're holding in the bottom of Pei Dalet and Beis, 3 lines from the bottom. And with Hanukkah on the horizon, just a few short days, anyone that would like to partake in the incredible Schus HaTorah of Hanukkah. Hanukkah, the Neiros, of course, reminiscent of the Ar HaTorah. What greater Schus Talmud Torah Barabim. Please feel free to reach out on any form of communication. But for now, we're holding on the very bottom of Pei Dalet and Beis, 3 lines at the bottom, and let's allow the learning to continue being a Zechus Refuah Shalema for Gavriel Simcha ben Miriam Ahuva Besoich Shar Chayli Yisrael. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Yochanan, a bit of a sidebar din Hashechet Behema Balayla Bifnim. If someone shechs an animal, someone shechs a behema, which is a carbon, he shechs it Balayla Bifnim, inside the azara. Vehala bachotz, and then he brings it up on the mizbeach bachotz. Chayiv, the halacha is he is chayiv. Let's allow Rashi in the last end of the Amid. Hashechet b'im balel bifnim vehala yisay bachotz chayiv. Why? Shemal bachotz. Bafil Rav Yehuda damar im also bifnim teirade. Even according to Rav Yehuda, who said that we would take it off the mizbeach. We would not take these off. The chayiv alos and bachotz. It still is a chiyuv for bringing it up. Bachotz. Why? And here Rashi spells out the critical detail that we'll see in a few days, a few weeks. The miskablin bifnim, because you did the kabbalah sadam bifnim, and therefore that's the reason why if you then bring it outside, you're going to be chayiv for bringing the carbon outside when you are he'ela bachutz. And we turn over to Pehei Amid Aleph, and says the Gemara, Loi tehei pechusa. You know why? This is no less mishaycher bachutz mal bachutz. This is no less that if someone shechs bachutz and brings the carbon bachutz, which in such a case is a chiyuv both for the shchita and for the hakrava. Therefore, so too in our case. But asks the Gemara and Rav Yochanan, Masar v'chiyah baravin, 2 lines down, Pehei Amid Aleph, Hashaychet oif bifnim. Someone shechs an oif bifnim inside the azara, umala bachutz, and then he brings it up outside. What's the halacha? Potter. He is potter for bringing the carbon outside. This oif was what was done with it, and we know there's 2 ways of shechting. You can either do shchita or you can do malika. And because this oif was done ba'oifen shchita and not ba'oifen malika, that is the problem. So you're not allowed to bring it up on the mizbeach. However, if you did, you're going to be potter, as Rashi says, al halasai deina miskaba b'fneim ela maluk. Continues the Gemara, but what happened? Shachar bachotz u'mal bachotz, then chayiv. Neima, but says the Gemara, I don't understand. According to Rav Yochanan, why is the first case, are you not chayiv? Neima lo tei b'chusa mishechan u'mal bachotz, as we just said in the top line over here, and that was Rav Yochanan's rationale why there is a chiyuv. So frak the Gemara, but we see in the Brisa not that way. Answers the Gemara, you're right. To Yofta, this is indeed a kasha on Rav Yochanan, or Iba Yisema Shchita Za'if Ifnim Mikdal Katzli. Or we could say that there's a critical difference, is that over here there was an issue with the Etzem Shchita. In fact, he did Shchita, not Malika, and therefore it's tantamount to just killing the bird, and that's the reason why it will be different than our case. Says the Gemara, Amar Ula, Emure Kachim Kalim Shehelam Lefnei Zrikas Damim. If the emurim, the parts of the carbon, are brought up on the mizbeach before the dam was thrown, before the zrika, lo yardu, you don't take them down. Nase lachma shal mizbeach. This really brings us to the theme of this parak, mizbeach mekadesh. That anything that is brought on the mizbeach gives a kedusha. So says the Gemara, in this case, what's going to be the story? It's going to be the lachma yishal mizbeach, and therefore lo yardu. It's going to have to stay up on the mizbeach. Amar Rav Zera Afananami Tanina. Says Rav Zera, we also learned this in our Braisa. Shenishbach Dama. What happens if you have a carbon and you didn't do this Rika? You know why? Because the dam spilled. V'shiyatza Dama Chutz Leklayim, or the dam was brought Chutz Leklayim. And the Braisa over there doesn't say there's difference in the cases. Whether Kache Kachim, whether Kache Kalim. Therefore, Umma, also 10 lines down. Let's say you want to do this Rika, you're not able to. Why? Because the blood spilled, or it's puzzle. And Amrid, yeah, we just said, Im alu lo yardu. If it went up in the Mizbeach, it doesn't come down. Hachab over here, Dimbal Lizraik. Zayrek. Over here in Ula's case, if the Kohen wanted to throw the dam, he's yes allowed to throw it. Like Kol Shekain, certainly the halacha should not come down. So the Gemara brings a raya from this case to the din of Ula, of Emure Kache Kalim Shalom Nezikas Damim, you don't take down. We have a raya from this case that it would be Lo Yardu. Says the Gemara, no raya. Ter Gemara Kache Kachim. The whole raya was predicated on the Braisa being open-ended, and that we're explaining that the Braisa is referencing Kache Kachim, Kache Kalim, both of them. Says the Gemara, no. The Braisa is only referring to Kache Kalim. Says the Gemara, Hare passed out the Kache Kalim, no. But what about the Karban Pesach? The Karban Pesach, which is Kache Kalim. And yet, we know the halacha is Lo Yardu. We saw this back in that Daf Dalid. Explains the Gemara, Tergma b'Shaloi Lishman. It's only going to be a case in which Karban Pesach was brought Shaloi Lishma, but the Zrika was already done, and therefore there's no raya. Says the Gemara, Tanan, let's bring another raya of a Kulan Shalu Chayim L'Chayiv. All of them that were brought up, Chayiv L'Yam Mizbeach, Yardu, they have to come down. So what does the Mishnah say? Live animals do not remain on the Mizbeach. Hashchutin, Lo Yardu. Says the Gemara, what does this show us? That if they're brought on the Mizbeach after being shechted, then they don't come down, even if they went up before the Zrika. So says the Gemara, what do we see from here? My love, what's his case? Just like we assumed before, anytime it doesn't say anything, we assume that it applies to both. And therefore, we have Nacham al Araya to Ula, that Kachin Kalim that was placed in Mizbeach before the Zrika Lo Yardu. You're going to leave it there? Says the Gemara, Nacham al no Raya Loi Hashchutin Mehan. If they're brought up after the Shechita, then Mehen Yardu, Mehen Lo Yardu. Some are going to come down, some are going to not come down. What's the chalik going to be? Nachamol, Kache Kachim, Kache Kalim. Kache Kachim are going to remain there, whereas Kache Kalim will, yes, come off, and therefore we have no Raya. Aiva Kulam Katani, Kulan Achayim. No, they're all going on the live animals. Says the Gemara, Pshita. Says the Gemara, you're right. La'olam achayim ubedukin shebahayin. Talking about a case that has a mum, a scratch in the eye, a cataract. Believe there Kiva the Amar. On such a scenario, im alu la yardu. So the Mishnah is teaching us that if in such a case they did go up on the mizbeach, then yes, they will have to come down, even though they cannot be put back up. Why? Because in such a scenario of a mum will not get the kedusha of the mizbeach by being brought on the mizbeach. Says the Gemara, 1 second. How are you now learning this Mishnah? Bibsulin. So b'mai ukim to bibsulim. You're telling me it's case for karma that's possible. Seifa. Then the Mishnah says, Chein oila shalsa chaye, chein oila shalsa chaya l'roisha mizbeach terid. And so too a carbon oil that went to the top of the mizbeach should come down. Shachta b'roisha mizbeach. If it was shechted on the top of the mizbeach, yavshit, we skin it, v'yenatach b'makayma, and we cut it up in its place and we burn it on the marach. V'psula frakti gemara, but wait, the way that you just explained this case was what? It's talking about a psula. Bas hefshivini tuachu, wait! If the carbon is basal, there's no hefshin, there's no nituach. You don't cut it up, you don't do the skinning. V'nesata isa merachmana. Isa ksheira v'lay psula. So ask the Gemara, if you're going to tell me it's a psula, then the end of the brisa, it's going to have a big problem. Says Gemara, no, sifa something ksheira. So we're going to split the brisa in half. The first part in Achanami is talking about psula, then there's talking about ksheira. Omay kamash malon, tiyesh, hefshem v'nituach, b'roisham mizbeach. That's going to be the chiddush. But says Gemara, but wait, Ulaman, this is a debatable point, whether we do Hefshem and Nituach on the Mizbeach. So according to Man Amr, that says we do not. So Michael, remember what's the Chiddush going to be? My skin and going Shahaisa, Loishasa, Koisher, Vinifl Salah. So Gemara changed that the case has to be, there was a moment after the Zrikas Adam that indeed the animal was kosher, and then it became puzzle. Rav Lazar, Berav Shemini Damar, Kadam, the moment that there's a zrika, the moment there's a zrika on a kosher animal, Ve'orza, Basar Shah Achas, that moment gets the hartzah, gives us the kapara. Therefore, Yafshitanu Va'ira Lekahanim, one would skin it and indeed give it to the Koyanim. So an interesting ukimta that fits with the sheet of Elazar Rav Shimon. But ask the Gemara 1 second, El Dikatani. That which the Brisa says. You take down the inners, and you rinse them. Lamali, why are you doing that? If we're talking about a case where the carbon is really puzzle, you don't take down the karbayim, you don't take down the innards. Why? Because you're never going to be allowed to bring them back up. Only once they're there, you leave them there. But says more 1 second. Says we don't understand. You're going to bring a carbon with the innards, with the intestines, full of its garbage, full of the excrement. But how can you do that? Says the Gemara, 2 lines at the bottom. Says the Navi, you're going to bring a carbon which isn't showing favor to Kadosh Baruch Hu. You can't bring a carbon that's disgusting. So how is that shaykh? Explains the Gemara, why are you going to have to wash it? Since you're not going to bring it back up, leave it. Meaning, we just suggested in the Brisa, take it down and wash it. Frak the Gemara. So Gemara said, well, what's your other option? Don't wash it and bring it up as an ichi carbon? Says, no, that wasn't another option. The question of the Gemara just is, what are you washing it for? You take it off the Mizbeach and you leave it down. So explains the Gemara, you know why? We're worried that let's say another kohen's going to come along and he's not going to know that these karbayim, that these innards are from a basal carbon. That other kohen might go and bring it on the Mizbeach. Says the Gemara as we turn over to pay the Hayam and Beis. Are we do something that the Kahanim could make a mistake? You're not supposed to bring the karbayim back up. But once you wash it, then afakert. Then what? Then the kohen is going to see it. It's going to seem like a kosher part of a carbon, and then vada they're going to bring it back up. So how can we create a matziv that might come to a psol? Says the Gemara, you're right, that's a concern on the second line. I don't know where we're highlighting. Ah, there it goes. Says the Gemara, you're right, and it might cause a mistake. But what's the alternative? The alternative is to leave this lying around like filth, like that is not a shaykh, that is not possible. And therefore, says the Gemara, we rather have a potential takala, but have it not be in a matziv of than the alternative. Says the Gemara on the 3rd line, a new sugya. Kache kalam, you brought in the Mizbeach. We said, you said you leave them there. Says the Gemara, Rav Yechon indeed asked this as a shayla. When you make a mistake brought up for the zrika, what's the halacha? Yardu or layardu, amalei ravami. You're asking if you take it down. Why don't we ask? Is there a din of me'ila? Amarlei. Meila kami baile. Why? Dizriku de kabalahu. We're not asking about meila because dizriku de kabbalah meila. Because once there's zrika, then it gives it a status of a real carbon. Then avada, we know that there's meila. Ki kami baile yurida. Says the Gemara, Pashat layardu, and Yechon said, no, you don't take it down. Ve'ein bahen meila. Rav Nachman Yitzchak Masni Achi. Rav Nachman Yitzchak learned a little bit differently. 10 lines down, the first one line is Masnu Achi. Omer Rav Chia Barabba by Rav Yechon Merdikachi Kalam Shalom Days Rikas Daman Yishbem Eloi Loi Omer Le Rav Ami. But you read the one, you ask if you should take it down. Omer read the Lakami Baili Dinasu Lachmei Shal Mizbeach. Avad has to stay there. Ki Kami Baili Mila Pashay V'Shashat Achi Lo Yardu. You leave it there and Ve'ein Bahen Mi'ila. And with that, we move on to the next segment of the Mishnah. 10 lines from the white lines, the two dots. Ve'elu lo yahaya psulin. Said the Mishnah the following: did not have their psulim in the kaidash. We're talking about an animal with a mum. Rav Akiva said no, the animal with a mum is going to be, it's still going to have kedusha. Let's see what this is. Amar Rav Yechon lo yichshar Rav Akiva. What does Rav Akiva mean? It's kosher. Ella bedukish b'ayin. Again, this case is a scratch in the eye, the cataract in the eye. Why? Because by an oif, by a bird, this is not of a din of a mum, so we machshad it in other cases. So if an animal that has such a mum is brought in the mizbeach, well, yes, get kedusha. V'hu, this is only shekalim hekdesh asa hekdeshon es mudam. That's only if it was makdish, if one consecrated it before it got the mum. But if the mum was there prior, then it would not get the kedusha. Rav Akiva, excuse me, Umaydir Rav Akiva, Bailas Nekiva, Dikshada Mumalek Disha, by an Oilav and Akiva, that what? Dikshada Mumalek Disha, Damya. That if it's an Akiva, then it's considered as if it is similar to the mum coming before the Hekdisha, meaning the Mizbeach will not be makdish. Just like and of course, this is because a carbon Oila is only a Zachar. So says the Gemara, if someone was makdish, so in trying to being an Akeva, then that is similar to an animal which had a mum prior, which will not get kedusha when brought on the mizbeach. Is there a din of nirveh of an animal that had relations by an oif or not? Me, Amar, do we say do we say that the Torah says that what do you have to bring a carbon from min ha behema? Min comes to teach us. In any scenario that it's shayach b'ravea isa b'nirveh kolecha deleza b'ravea leza b'nirveh udama. No, harei navda b'avera lamaisa avera was done, therefore it can't be brought in the mizbeach. What is the halacha? Amar Rabba on the last narrow line, Tashema, bring your raya from our Mishnah. Rav Akiva machshav b'bali mumin. Rav Akiva said by a bal mum it's going to be kosher. Misa nachsher nami b'nirveh. But if it would work, you should say that case as well. All of a kosher b'ifais. So Shema Mina, it's the raya that it doesn't work. Amrav Nachman Yitzchak Avananami Tanina Hanirveh V'Amuksa V'Hanevad V'Esnanu Machir V'Tumtum V'Androgenis. All of these scenarios, Kula Mitamim Begadim Abeis Abliya Shema Mina. All are going to be mitame clothing with regard to the Tumas Beis Abliya, which we learned extensively about, meaning it has a din of a nevela, doesn't have a din of a shchuta. And therefore, what do we see from here? We see from the fact that an oif, a bird that was involved in sodomy, is listed. We see it cannot be brought as a carbon. And we wrap it up. Rav Chanina Skana Kehanim concluded the Mishnah, almost concluded the Mishnah, that a Baal Mum can be brought in the Mizbeach. My Kamashlan, Ibai Sema, Mais Kamashlan, Ibai Sema, My Doicha, Kalach Aryad. Either they're telling you a Maisa, this actually happened, or what does it mean he was Doicha, he turned it away? It means he would do a Kalach Aryad, he was telling a Maisa about his father, that he wouldn't make it obvious that the animal was puzzle, but he would make it in a backhanded manner to avoid that anyone would see such a terrible matzah that they're taking this thing off the Mizbeach. Shem Shem Allah says the end of the Mishnah. Once they went up, they don't come down. So once they come down, they don't go back up. Amar Ula Shanu Ala Shlahi Mishalah Mashla Ben Ar. Says Ula, this is only if the fire on the Mizbeach, then now you start burning it. Davo Mashla Ben Ar Yalu Achidish. even if it came off the Mizbeach. But if it already started burning, then you got to put it back up. Ramari Masni Abreisha, Rav Nachman Misura Masni Aseifa. So Shaila was, where was this thing said, on the Reisha or of the Seifa? Hatzam Zakidim Vakarnam Batalafim. The bones, the sinews, the horns, and the hooves. Zuzman Shebechu Barim. Yalu. Once they're attached to the carbon, they're brought up in the Mizbeach. Perishu, once they're taken off the animal. Yalu. Amar Ula, and on this, Ula said, if they're ready on fire, Yalu. So man, the Masni on this thing in the Seifa, Koshkin Aresha by us. Man, the Masni Aresha, Val Seifa, Lav, B'nei Aktarninu. These items are never supposed to be brought in the Mizbeach, and therefore these items, even if they were Mashlam Emar, even if they already started getting burnt by the fire, they will not be allowed to be brought back up. We'll pick it up from the Mishnah on the next year, B'siyata Tishmaya.